Hey y'all, Tommy Post here. Time to put out volume 3 of the Micro Pigs growth and evolution into a usable off-road micro vehicle. Today I'm going to go ahead and fill you in on what we ended up doing for a lift and tires, because everybody wants lift. You really need lift. These things are pretty low slung when you first get them. I mean, if you've got one of these first gen Kias, you know that they're not very tall, and they come with little tiny tires on them. So with just a moderate lift and just a slightly oversized tire, you can really increase your ground clearance very well and make these things very usable. Of course, there's that whole thing about how tall is too tall. Well, that's all about how much money you want to spend. I personally did not want to try to throw, 4 or 5 inches of lift onto this thing and then fight CV angles and breakage up front. Then you have offset track bar in the back. The taller you go, it starts to shift your rear end over to the side. So, it's all in what you want. I personally do a lot of trail riding, so I settled for something very modest and moderate, and I'll take you through it. Now, if you've got a first generation Kia, you know that this is lifted. I mean, you can look at your own if you don't have a lift, and with a small tire, you can see that there's a lot less fender gap than this. Maybe this is a better angle. So the lift I have here is 2 inches. Now, the way this thing was sold, it's leaning. It doesn't look like it's that tall on that side, but we're sitting on an angle. This side probably looks taller. Probably should have shot the video from this side. But anyhow, once upon a time, Kia made a lift for this thing, and it was a factory option. You could buy it, and what it was a little plate on the top and a little plate on the bottom, and they were both drilled for different locations, and then a little, like a steel sleeve spacer in between the two. And it worked as a factory lift. Then I think one of the companies like Prothane or, I don't know, Rugged Ridge or something like that tried to make a something similar to it out of urethane. And it was available for a couple of years, or maybe not even that long, and didn't sell very well. So it was discontinued. So what do you do to lift it? This particular lift was bought off of eBay. I think I've already mentioned, but these cars are very popular in Russia as well as down in South America. Maybe it's because of cost. I'm sure it's because of cost. But in either case, if you go on eBay and you type in, what are those first generations, either start at 98 or something like that and end at 2003 or 4, maybe 2003, I don't know. But the first generation Kia, if you type that in and put lift, you'll find a spacer lift from the Russian Federation, and they're not expensive at all. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I think $100 would probably get you the front and the rears both. They sell it in metric and they sell it as a kit, but it equates to 2 inches of reliable lift. Now in the rear, these things are made of urethane. Take a look in the rear. There's your spring right there. That's the rear spring, rear axle. All you have to do is, support the vehicle, lift the vehicle up, put jack stands under that, and use a hydraulic jack underneath the rear axle itself. Disconnect whatever bolts you have to be able to let the rear axle down, and you'll relieve the pressure off those springs. Bring it down far enough, slip that spacer in there, jack it right back up with that spacer in between the perch and the spring. And that spacer is not 2 inches thick, but the size that it is with the geometry that it fits gives you 2 inches of lift. Now, that's pretty close to 2 inch. I think I don't recall exactly, but I think when I pulled a tape on it, it was like 1 3/4 or 1 7/8 or whatever. But it uses the spring rate plus that particular spacer to equate to 2 inches lift. Be prepared to replace bolts. The rear track bolt broke. One of the shock bolts broke. You definitely want to be prepared for broken bolts, especially if you live anywhere that's got some salt on the road. And most of these bolts have never been taken off on these things for quite some time. Out in front, it's another spacer. And this one sets... Alright, this is your front strut assembly. So basically, what you would consider the shock is inside of the spring, and it's one solid assembly that bolts into place. So what you do is you bring the whole thing down. There's 3 studs up above here. You access the nuts by opening the hood. Take those nuts off of there and, support the vehicle, support under the A-arm. And you can use your jack to let down the struts. They come down, slide out of place. This thing here, it's awful dirty, but this top part right here, that's a urethane spacer. Came with this kit. And this is the factory steel spring perch that holds the strut assembly together, and that steel normally sat against the top of the inside of this perch here. Now it has a spacer there. Kit's awesome. It comes with longer studs, and it's really a direct fit. Be prepared for a front end alignment. A lot changes when you put them in, but nothing that a front end alignment can't correct. So don't be afraid of it. So that's pretty much how we got 2 inches of lift on this little rascal. For tires, cheap eBay mud tires. The place that these things want to rub, unless you get absolutely ridiculous lift on them and you want to beat stuff up with hammers and you want to, pretty much tear up your vehicle just to make it work, where the front wants to rub is here. Right on the inside, and that's at full turn. So when you turn fully, this part wants to rub inside. I chose, there's plenty of room in the rear. Plenty of room. Could have easily gone to a 30, 31 inch tire in the rear, because it only goes straight up and down. It doesn't turn for rubbing. Now this tire, if you do the math on the size, it's a 235 75 15. It's right at about 29 inches. But fortunately, you pull the tape measure on it, and it's close to 30 inches. It's 29 and something. So this is just a no-name, foursome, nobody's ever heard of it, mud tire, but it works very well. Who wants to spend a lot of money, right? Especially when you're going to go over heavy rocks and stuff. It's not an ego thing. I could go out and buy boggers. I could go out and buy pretty much whatever I want. But what's the point? These things perform very, very well. It's all low speed anyway. I run them at 15 pounds of air. 15 pounds is perfect for a vehicle this small. 15 pounds of air is good for sharp rocks, good for pretty much anything. So that's what I like to run them at. These wheels, soft 8s. You can get them on eBay as well. About 50 bucks a wheel. Cheap, cheap, cheap. They're just a standard steely wheel. This one's a soft 8, Krager, but you get them under different names like American Racing, and then there's a lot of other shops that like to put their own name on them. But it's the same standard stamped steel welded wheel. These things are 15 by 7. I don't recall the offset right now, and I don't recall the bolt pattern. If you ask me in the comments below, then that will inspire me to look it back up and let you know, and I would be happy to. But you need the right offset on the wheel. It matters, trust me. It's a Ford pattern. Once again, I'll tell you what that is, but this fits a Ford. And if you've got manual locking hubs, which I truly hope you do, you need to also choose the right center bore. You want to make sure that you have one big enough for that. It's not hub-centric, so you'll definitely be using conical lug nuts to make sure that it stays true and centered and all that good stuff. So anyhow, that's pretty much it. Volume 3 of the Micro Pig touching on a modest lift, modest mud tires. They will fit anybody's budget. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if I already said this. I might have already said this, but wheelbase on this thing is very short. I threw a tape measure down today, and I measured center to center, from the center here, where the locking hubs are, to the center of the axle over there. And honestly, that thing's only about 8 feet. It's short. So you put even just a little bit of lift, it results in quite improved ground clearance. So that's pretty much it. We'll move into the rest of it on another day. Tommy Post, hope y'all are off-roading these little things because they're a lot of fun. I appreciate you joining me, and once again, any questions at all, put them up down below and I'll try to answer them for you. If it's something I've done, I'll tell you. If it's something I haven't done, maybe I'll do it. Y'all have a good time off-roading. See you on the next one.